I landed flat on my back in the marsh. Cushioning my fall, the soggy ground swallowed me on impact, then spit me back out. Thick, wet chunks of mud flew up, and the assassin was on me before they ever came back down. Now let's have a little chat. Straddling me, pressing a long, thin knife against my throat, Taryn Rowe leaned in close, and her weight pushed me down. Silt gurgled into my ears. It sloshed up over my arms and legs, flowed thick and cold over my stomach and shoulders. "We can talk all you want," I told her, "but do you mind if I get up first?" "Actually, I do." Her short leather tunic creaked as she wriggled a bit to make herself comfortable. "I like it here." "Glad you're happy," I said sourly, mourning the loss of my dignity and my sword. "But you're not the one sinking." Tossing a chunk of muddy yellow hair out of her lean face, Taryn's lips curved into a suggestive smile. "Don't you like me on top?" "You're only up there because you didn't play fair. You distracted me," I said, eyeing the cord dangling in my face. It was holding the front of her shirt together, and I could almost catch it in my teeth. One little tug, I thought. That's all it would take to release the generous amount of pale flesh bursting out. I don't even need my hands. "Well, look at that." Snickering, Taryn raised her body up slightly off mine and looked down between her legs to where our breeches met. I would have never thought that he and Troy. Pausing, she threw a measure of drum into her words. "Notorious sword for hire and ruthless hunter of bandits and brigands would ever sink so low as to be aroused by one of his own prey. But there it is." She glanced back up at me. "Like it rough to you? Or maybe it's just been a while." "Maybe," I said, edging my fingers through the muck, searching for my sword. "You're just the most attractive, bloodthirsty criminal that's set on me in a long time." "Is that why I'm still alive?" "You were hoping I might do you a favor or a tumble before you kill me?" "You're alive, Taryn, because in the last 3 months you haven't slowed down long enough for me to catch you. Now that you have, I'd really like to know why." "Isn't it obvious?" She pushed the very tip of the knife into my skin. "I'm surrendering." I grunted a laugh. "You killed 6 guards in your escape from the city prison. You've ridden horses to death, one after another, barely stopping to eat or rest. You've led me all through the mountains of Kale, clear across Rella to the very edge of Langorian territory and back. And now you stop here." Mindful of the knife, I glanced around. Could have gone my whole life without stepping foot in this fetid hole, and you got us in so deep it's going to take weeks to get back out. "Sorry," she shrugged. "What are you doing here, Taryn? Why did you stop?" "A poor excuse for a horse I was riding got stuck in a bog. I tried to get him out, but the lazy bastard just stood there." "That's because he was stuck." I risked a slight, annoyed shake of my head. When she didn't object, I shifted my shoulders some, fidgeting to camouflage my continued hunt for a weapon. "I'm not buying your bullshit, Taryn. You're an assassin. You hide in the shadows, slit the throats of defenseless people for money, put off a kill for days to avoid confrontation. Apparently you steal horses from defenseless old men as well. But you don't sit and wait for me to show up so we can fight on head on. And you don't surrender." Purposefully, I held her cold dark eyes with my pale ones. "You're up to something." Taryn leaned down. She put her grimy face in mine and pressed her leather-clad breasts against my chest. "Have you ever thought that I'd let you catch me?" I laughed. "Who's looking for a tumble now?" I admit I was curious to see if you were as pretty up close as you are from afar away. After all, with the amount of dust I was kicking up in your face, it was hard to get a good look at all those fabled Shinree features of yours. Now that I have... Taryn ran a slow finger down the sharp slope of my nose. "It was so worth it." Her caress meandered over the well-defined bones in my face, then across my mouth and jawline. "I find most of your kind uninteresting to look at. They all seem so watered down." "That's what happens after 500 years of crossbreeding." "But not you. You're different," she said thoughtfully, continuing to scrutinize me. "They really should make more like you." "No, they shouldn't." Fingers still wandering, Taryn bit her lip and shivered in approval. "Gods, but you're a tasty one." "You can stop now." "Why? Did I embarrass you?" "Don't you like standing out?" She read the answers on me and laughed. "Gods, Troy, get over it. You're a throwback. A relic. You don't blend with anyone. Not even your own kind." I didn't bother replying. Taryn's amusement evolved into a peal of taunting laughter, and I knew, not only would she dismiss anything I said, she was right. Having been deliberately bred from 2 full-blooded Shinree, I was one of the few of my race alive to descend directly from an untainted line. that made my appearance literally straight out of history. The old records describe my ancestors as tall with a build that's naturally strong and lean. The sketches show their keenly sharp features and tan skin, their distinctive pure white, colorless hair and matching eyes, and I wear their stamp blatantly. Not just physically either. I could draw the energy out of any stone pulled from the Shinree mines, shape it and bend it to my will, quicker and better than most. From the perspective of any breeder, I was the perfect Shinree specimen. From the perspective of the common man, I was an oddity, a curiosity, a danger. And they weren't far off the mark. If you combine my conspicuous appearance with a brutal history of the Shinree, as well as my own grave personal transgressions, the air tends to get real uncomfortable when I walk in a room. Taryn, however, looked a little too comfortable. "What do you want?" I asked her, shifting in the mud. "This?" She lowered the knife down inside the collar of my shirt and slid it under the thin strip of leather tied around my neck. Lifting the cord with the blade, she exposed the slender black shot of obsidian fastened to the end. "I want this." "The stone?" I hesitated. "Why?" "It's pretty." "It's a rock. A poorly cut one at that." "You're just being modest." Almost lovingly, she stared down at the shard. "We both know the energy it holds. The dark, wonderful power." "There's no power, Taryn. I picked it up in the road a while back." "And you kept it. Why? Because it matched your coat?" She laughed at me, but the sound cut out abruptly. "It's been trapped for so long, waiting," she said in a dreamy, tender tone, "waiting for you to feel it, to wake it up, to embrace it." Taryn's eyes snapped from the shard to mine. "It calls to you." "You're wrong, and you lie. I know what the stone is, where it's from, what it can do." "Drop the act, Taryn," I said, faking disinterest even as my unease grew. "Whatever con you're playing at, it won't work. You're Kalish, not Shinree. Your kind can't use magic or sense it, which makes this stone nothing more than a chunk of black rock to you. So what do you want with it?" "I could ask you the same thing. You gave up channeling magic a long time ago, yet you keep a piece of temptation on a string around your neck. So what do you want with it?" "I want you to get your filthy hands off of it." Smirking, Taryn lowered the knife to my chest, and the obsidian went with it. "What's it been, Troy? 10 years since you last cast a spell?" "Something like that." Groping in the sludge, I stretched my arm out further and finally felt steel at the end of my reach. Gradually, I tugged it closer. "Are we pretending to forget? Or wasn't your reason for quitting memorable enough?" Taryn's eyes tightened, and she grinned slightly. It was a cruel, devious expression that went well with her next words. "Slaughtering all those men. Killing your own commander. What was her name again? Rella's whore of a queen?" Taryn tilted her head pensively. "Oh yes, Elagar." My temper spiked. "That's enough!" "Personally, I don't understand what you saw in the little dark savage, but I do like the way you repaid her attentions. A queen shares her bed with you, a lowly Shinree, and you drained the life out of her with magic, along with several thousand of her soldiers." Taryn's grin morphed into a proud smile. "It really was a brilliant strategy. Wipe out all the fighters on both sides so there's no one left to fight. I love it. That wasn't what I wanted. I didn't mean for it to happen that way." "Well, you should have. Rella and Langor have been at each other's throats for so long, the only way to bring the dogs to heel was to slaughter them." I shook my head at her flippancy. "Guess you're not the sentimental sort. But I can see you are. It's kind of cute, really, but..." She bent and brushed my lips with hers. "How about I take your mind off all this unpleasantness for a while?" And in return, slowly and meaningly, she ground her body against mine. "You overlook that little bounty King Sauron placed on my head back in Kale." "Which one?" "All of them." "Am I supposed to forget about the family you murdered as well?" She flashed a wicked grin. "Which one?" "I'm not bargaining you with, Taryn." Beneath the bog, I tightened my grip around the sword. "You're going back to Kale one way or another." "Oh, come on, Troy," she whined. "It's a fair deal. It's been a long, lonely 3 months with nothing between my legs but the back of a filthy horse. And don't tell me you aren't interested." She snaked a hand down the front of me, "because I can feel otherwise. I'll live. In fact, I'll probably live a lot longer." I moved my weapon toward the surface. "Now use the knife, bitch, or get off me." Taryn frowned. "Here, I thought you'd be charming. Being a war hero and all. I'm not a hero. I never was." I expected another crude quip, which would be her last. My sword was ready, just below the top watery layer of the marsh, but instead of more sarcasm or another bribe, Taryn's expression went strangely blank. Her voice took on an odd, husky, almost mannish tone, and she said, "It's good you understand that. A magic user is far too selfish a creature to ever be a hero." I watched her a moment. Her body was completely still. She wasn't even blinking. "Taryn?" She didn't answer, and a tingle of warning streaked across my shoulder blades. "Taryn?" Abruptly she flinched. The knife in her hand jumped against my throat, nicking my skin, but I barely noticed. I was too startled by the creepy way her eyes were rolling back in her head and the rapt, sightless stare she was training on me. With the same weird voice she said, "The stone! I'll give you whatever you want for it!" Unnerved, I said, "It's not for sale." "You answer so quickly. Can't we bargain?" "Sure. Here's my counteroffer." I hoisted my sword out of the bog and slammed the muddy hilt into the side of her head so hard she went flying.